everyone, before explaining the movie, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you like such videos. Missing. The film opens on a camcorder video from 2008. Little June Allen is playing with her father, James, during a family trip. June's mom Grace walks in as James is suffering from a nosebleed, though he says he is fine. The video cuts off before the end as Grace is viewing and editing it. A brief montage shows that James apparently died from a brain tumor, with many people offering June and Grace their sympathies. They move from Texas to Van Nuys. In the present day, June, now played by Storm Reid, has a bit of a rocky relationship with Grace. She considers her mother to be nagging and always on her case. Grace has also been in a relationship with a man named Kevin Lin, and they are set to go on a trip together to Colombia. Kevin tries to talk to June since he will be updating her on their trip, and Grace sends June an "I love you" text, but she just gives it a thumbs up react. She also continues to mourn James. Once Grace and Kevin are gone, June makes plans with her best friend, Vina, to party throughout her time alone. Kevin sends pictures of himself and Grace, but June mostly spends her free time partying, with occasional checkups from Grace's lawyer friend Heather. On the day that Grace and Kevin are set to return home, June goes to the airport and holds up a joke sign, welcoming Grace back from prison, but she ends up waiting for hours, long after the other passengers on the same flight have arrived and picked up their luggage. June calls the hotel and uses a translator to speak Spanish, learning that someone saw two Americans leave when Grace and Kevin were supposed to, but they left all their luggage at the hotel. When June asks if they can check the security footage, the manager tells her that the footage will overwrite in 48 hours. June looks for a cheap worker on Go Ninja in Colombia to help her access the hotel security footage. She meets a man named Javier Ramos, pleading her case to him to get him to help. Javi is unable to access the security footage, but he overhears that someone saw Kevin going to a hardware store and get some money. As Javi goes to find a lead, Heather helps June get in touch with FBI agent Elijah Park for help on finding Grace. June and Vina manage to get Kevin's passwords and access his emails. They find blocked emails from multiple women, referring to him by different names like Darren, Kyle, or Luke. The girls learn from Park that Kevin was a con man who was recently released from prison in the past year, but any evidence they may have gathered off of him illegally would be thrown out in court. June and Vina also find that Kevin, his real name, was recently in contact with a woman with the username Bunnacakes, real name Rachel Page. June does some more investigating and hears from Rachel's coworkers that she hasn't been seen in 2 weeks. Javi calls June back and says he went to multiple hardware stores and found the one where Kevin had visited, but all he bought was a lock. After more research, June learns that Kevin went to a Lover's Locks bridge. June continues to look into Kevin's other accounts and finds that his most recent location before Colombia was an isolated house. June calls the number from the link and speaks to a man named Jimmy, who says that Kevin had visited him because he came to him seeking salvation and redemption for his past crimes. When June goes through Kevin's dating apps, he finds out that this is how he and Grace met. They got on quite well, though Grace alludes to having a secret in her past that she privately tells Kevin about. Park contacts June and shows her footage of what appears to be Grace and Kevin, just after their trip to the bridge, where Grace apparently accepted Kevin's marriage proposal. Some men in masks get out of a van and pull Grace and Kevin into their van. Park promises to investigate, but the news of Grace's disappearance becomes nationwide news. The town's citizens gather and search for Grace, as it is believed that she never left Los Angeles. This is further compounded by the revelation that the woman in the pictures that Kevin was sending were not of Grace, but of Rachel, just obscured enough to make June think it was Grace. This leads to Rachel getting arrested but being released on bail to be a cooperating witness, but it now confirms that Grace's kidnapping was staged. Park tells the press that Grace is not a suspect, but nothing is being ruled out. June talks to Javi about her worries over her mother, as news of her going under different names and her having a court-sealed case file begins to paint her in a suspicious light. Javi tells her that she and her mother are lucky to have each other. June says he and his, often alluded to, son are lucky to have each other, but Javi says that his son has cut him off after they had a fight, exacerbated by the death of Javi's wife. June encourages Javi to reach out to his son. June finds in Kevin's emails a link to an encrypted messaging app, allowing June to speak to someone in Kevin's contacts under his guise. When June asks for the number, the one she receives belongs to Heather, leading June to suspect that Heather was involved in her mother's disappearance. June uses an Apple Watch that a classmate left at her house, and keeps pestering her to film herself as she goes to Heather's office to get answers. June knocks on her office door and finds it has already been opened. She discovers a file being erased on a computer, as well as threatening photos of herself on Heather's desk. Further searching finds signs of a struggle, including Heather's necklace broken. June enters a closet and makes the horrifying discovery of Heather's strangled body in the corner. Just as news of Heather's murder hits the news, June learns from Park that Kevin was supposedly seen by the border. June goes back on the encrypted text app and finds Kevin speaking to someone on the other end. Vina then sends June a link of a real-time crime tracker app, showing that police have found Kevin in Colombia. They surround him on the roof of the hotel, but there is quick gunfire, and Kevin is killed, leaving Grace's case running cold. When June talks to Javi again, she snaps at him and says it's his own fault that his son refuses to talk to him now after he gave her some advice she didn't want to hear. Now filled with despair, June begins to clear her voicemail since Grace had always asked that of her. She listens to some of the messages and hears how Grace called her Junebug, which inspires June to use that nickname in Grace's password to access her emails. She looks into a blocked account and finds an anonymous threatening message to her, saying they have found Grace. She also finds a link to security cameras that are all hidden in a familiar-looking house, which happens to be her very same childhood home. June then gets a phone call from Jimmy, the guy from Kevin's church. Jimmy sounds frantic and ends up appearing in front of the Ring doorbell camera to reveal that he is actually James, June's father, very much alive. A shocked June lets James in to explain himself. He tells her that Grace's real name is Sarah and that she has lied to June about his death, making up lies about him to get him imprisoned. Just as June begins to suspect that something is wrong, James forcefully grabs June and pulls her into the trunk of his car. A flashback shows the rest of the home video from the beginning. The bloody nose James got wasn't from a tumor, but from his drug use. The truth is, he was an abusive drug abuser, and Grace turned him into the police to keep herself and June safe. Recorded calls featured James threatening Grace and demanding to see June. Grace had changed her name and moved away to prevent James from finding her, but he ended up being the limo driver that took Grace and switched her with Rachel, working with Kevin to make her disappear, but Kevin never knew his true intentions. Heather was also the one who helped Grace form a new identity to get her away from James, and they became very close friends. James brings June to the old family house, tying her up in her old upstairs bedroom. Grace is being kept in a shed, trying to find her own way to escape. James enters with a gun and throws her June's sweater, cluing her into her presence. Grace fights James and briefly takes him out long enough for her to run and lock him in the shed. Grace runs up to June's room and reunites with her, freeing her and seeing how apologetic June is toward her. Unfortunately, James gets loose and starts to get closer. June contacts Javi through WhatsApp on the Apple Watch, first apologizing to him for how she spoke to him and then asking for his help. He goes on June's Instagram to see a Father's Day pic she posted, which shows the family's old address to give to the police, but June loses her connection with Javi. James enters the room and threatens June and Grace, even shooting June in the side. When he attempts to tie June up again, Grace stabs James in the neck with a shard of glass. James locks them in the room again and tries to get help, but he slowly dies from his wound. June apologizes to a wounded Grace over how she treated her and then remembers how Grace always used Siri for everything. Remembering how her phone is in her room and her laptop screen is still linked to the security cameras, June uses Siri to access her phone and call 911. June and Grace are rescued and given medical attention. Their case is fictionalized in the Netflix crime drama Unfiction, which also covered the last movie's case on David Kim and his daughter Margot, which June thinks is lame. It also turns out that June and Grace have kept in touch with Javi, and he is successfully reunited with his son. June has a FaceTime call with Grace, ending with her finally telling her mom, through text, that she loves her. June Allen has a strained relationship with her mom Grace ever since the supposed death of her dad James. Grace goes on a vacation to Colombia with her boyfriend Kevin, but they don't return when June is supposed to pick them up. Fearing for her mother's whereabouts, she gets help from FBI agent Elijah Park, her best friend Vina, and a Go Ninja employee in Colombia named Javier Ramos. After June learns that Kevin used to be a con man that scammed other women out of their money, video footage surfaces of what appears to be Grace and Kevin being kidnapped. Further evidence shows that Kevin faked Grace being with him and that she never left Los Angeles to begin with. June also learns that Grace had a hidden past that was sealed in a court case file. When June tries to go to her with more questions, Heather turns up murdered. Kevin is also located in Colombia but is shot and killed by police before he can be brought in. Just as June is ready to give up, she finds security footage through Grace's email of what happens to be her old childhood home. But the big twist is that her father James is not only alive, but he was an abusive drug addict, which forced Grace to send him to prison and keep him away from June. James kidnaps June and brings her back to the house, where he had been keeping Grace. Grace manages to briefly break free and subdue James to go protect June, but James gets to them and shoots Grace. As he goes for June, Grace stabs him in the neck. James locks them in the room, but he succumbs to his wound before he can get help. June uses Siri from the security system to call for help, allowing police to locate her and Grace and get them help. After June and Grace are brought back to safety, they keep in touch with Javier and begin to repair their relationship. We have come to the end of our video. Please don't forget to like my video. Goodbye, dear friends. Manufacturer X Manager.